The first night, I didn't sleep. The room smelled like bleach and soft soap, and the walls were too white. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands in my lap, listening to the sounds outside my door. Wheels rolling, voices calling, someone coughing down the hall. Everything felt unfamiliar, too quiet, and too clean. My name is Edna. I am 78 years old, and this is my new home. A care home, they call it. Maple Grove Residence. It sounds like a place with trees and gardens, but the only maple I've seen is a small tree outside the dining room window. The nurse said my daughter chose this place because it's close to her work. I smiled when she told me that. Smiling is easier than speaking sometimes. I had a house once. A real house. With yellow curtains in the kitchen and a creaky wooden floor in the hallway. My husband, Thomas, built that house with his hands. He was a quiet man, always working, always fixing something. I loved him more than I ever told him. He died 8 years ago, in his sleep. I found him in the morning, still holding his glasses. I sat beside him for a long time, not crying, just holding his hand. After the funeral, the house felt different, colder, bigger. The sounds disappeared and silence took their place. For a while I managed fine. I cooked small meals. I talked to the television. I walked to the corner shop and told the cashier too many stories. But as time passed, walking became harder. The stairs looked steeper. My hands didn't always listen to my brain. And one morning, I fell in the bathroom. I couldn't get up for almost an hour. That was when my daughter, Lucy, said enough. She sat me down gently, like someone placing a vase on a shelf. She told me I needed help, proper care. I told her I was fine. I told her I had managed alone before. But she looked at me like I was a child. She had already decided. So now I'm here. A small room with a single bed, a wardrobe, and a round table with 2 chairs. One chair is always empty. There's a calendar on the wall. I cross off each day with a red pen, though I don't know why. Maybe it makes me feel like time is still moving, like I am still part of something. On my second morning, a nurse brought me tea. Her name is Janet. She's young and quick, always in a hurry. She smiled as she placed the cup on my table. "Anything else you need, Edna?" she asked. I wanted to say yes. I need my house. I need my life back. I need my daughter to visit more than once a month. But I only said, "No, thank you." I watched her leave and listened to the door click shut. I stared at the cup. It was green, with a small chip on the rim. Something about that chip made me feel comforted, imperfect, like me. Later that week, someone new came into my life. Her name was Ellie. She's 10 years old and full of energy, with curly hair that bounces when she walks. She comes every Thursday after school with her mother, who works in the office. Ellie doesn't visit anyone in particular. She just walks around, talking to whoever is willing to listen. That first Thursday, she popped her head into my room without knocking. "Hi," she said brightly. "Are you busy?" I looked at her, surprised. "No, not really." She walked right in, carrying a bag full of colored pencils and paper. "I'm Ellie. My mom works here. Do you want to draw something with me?" I hadn't drawn anything in decades, but her smile was wide and her eyes were full of light, so I said yes. We sat together at my little table, and she handed me a sheet of paper and a blue pencil. "Draw something from your memory," she said. I thought for a moment, then slowly began to draw my old kitchen, the yellow curtains, the kettle on the stove, the clock that never worked. My hand shook a little, but the lines appeared. Ellie drew a cat wearing sunglasses. She said it was her imaginary pet. When she left that day, she said, "I'll come next Thursday too, okay?" I smiled and nodded. "I'd like that." That night, I opened the drawer next to my bed and found a small notebook someone had left. It had a floral cover and blank pages. I opened it and wrote one sentence. "Today, a little girl reminded me that I am still here." I've written something every night since. Not long entries, just moments, feelings. A memory of Thomas fixing the old radio, Lucy as a baby, reaching for my necklace, the first snow that fell on our wedding day. The notebook is becoming my friend. It listens quietly and never interrupts. Some days are harder than others. There are mornings when I wake up and forget where I am. I sit up and wait to hear Thomas's steps in the hall. Then I remember, and my chest aches. There are other residents here, of course. Mrs. Patel next door listens to music on her old CD player. She hums sometimes. Mr. Brooks wears a tie every day, even when he's just going to the lounge. No one talks very much, though. We're all in our own little bubbles, walking slowly through our memories. Lucy came last Sunday. She brought flowers, white lilies, my favorite. We sat in the garden for a while. She talked about her work, her children, her husband. I listened and nodded, adding small comments when I could. Before she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "You're doing well, Mom." I wanted to say, "I'm lonely, Lucy. I miss you more than I can explain," but the words stayed in my throat. After she left, I sat in the garden alone, staring at the flower beds. A robin hopped near my feet. I watched it until it flew away. I don't blame Lucy. She has a life, a family, responsibilities. I raised her to be strong, to build her own world. But still, I wish she would come more often. Not out of duty, but out of love. That night, I wrote in my notebook. The garden was quiet. The wind was soft. But I wished someone was there to sit beside me. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The weeks passed like slow-moving clouds. Some days were soft, with sunlight and bird song. Others were gray, like wet wool hanging in the sky. But every Thursday, I waited for Ellie. She always arrived with a smile and something new in her bag. One week it was stickers. Another time it was a coloring book about animals in space. She made me laugh when she gave a unicorn a diving helmet and a rabbit a jetpack. "You're funny," I told her. She grinned. "I like making you smile." Nobody had said that to me in a long time. One Thursday, she brought a small voice recorder. "We're doing a school project," she said. "I have to record a story from someone older. You're the most interesting person I know." I blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you! Can you tell me something from when you were young?" I hesitated. My stories felt dusty, hidden in corners of my mind. But Ellie waited patiently, her recorder ready. So I told her about the summer of 1967. I was 20 and working in a tiny library in a small seaside town. That's where I met Thomas. He came in every Thursday afternoon to borrow gardening books, though I never saw him read one. He always returned them late, with a shy smile and an apology. I remembered how he finally asked me to tea and how nervous we both were. I told Ellie about the park bench where he first held my hand and the note he left in the library's poetry section, folded between pages of a love poem. As I spoke, I could feel that time again, sand on my feet, the sound of the sea, the way Thomas looked at me like I was the only person in the world. When I finished, Ellie pressed the stop button and said quietly, "That's the best story I've ever heard." She sent the recording to her teacher. Later, I found out they played it in class, and Ellie said everyone clapped. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Even old hearts can tell new stories." Ellie continued visiting each week, and slowly, she brought others. First, it was her friend Maya, then a boy named Jacob. They were curious, kind, and full of questions. "Did you ever fly in a plane?" "What was your favorite toy?" "Did you get in trouble at school?" I told them everything. I didn't hold back. I told them about sneaking biscuits from the tin when Mum wasn't looking, about the time I ran in the rain barefoot, and how I once got stuck in a tree trying to impress my sister. These children didn't look at me like I was old. They saw someone with a full life behind her. They made me feel whole, again. The nurses noticed the change in me. I laughed more. I asked for walks in the garden. I even started helping some of the other residents, like Mrs. Patel, who had trouble remembering which pills to take. "You're the sunshine around here," Nurse Janet said one morning. "We all see it." I smiled and looked out the window. Maybe I just needed someone to listen. One rainy afternoon, Ellie came in quietly. She wasn't her usual bubbly self. She sat down and looked at me with serious eyes. "Can I tell you something private?" she asked. "Of course, sweetheart." "My parents are fighting a lot," she said. "Mum sleeps on the couch now. I don't know what's going to happen." I felt a sudden weight in my chest. I had no advice, no perfect answers. But I took her hand and said, "When I was your age, my parents fought too. I used to hide behind the kitchen door and cry. But do you know what helped?" She shook her head. Having someone safe to talk to. Someone who wouldn't be angry or tell me I was wrong to feel sad. You can always talk to me, Ellie. I may be old, but I still remember what it's like to be 10. She leaned into my side, and I put my arm around her shoulders. For once, I was the one giving comfort again. That night, my notebook entry was short. Today, I was useful. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Lucy called. Not a short call. Not the kind where she's rushing or answering between errands. A real call. She asked how I was, what I had been doing, if I needed anything. I told her about Ellie and the recorder, about the children who visited, about the robin in the garden. There was a pause on the line. "Mom," she said, "you sound lighter." "I suppose I am," I replied. "I feel guilty," she admitted. "Putting you there. Leaving you. It hurt," I said. "But I understand. I know you thought it was the best choice. And maybe it was. But it was hard." She was quiet again. "I want to come next Sunday," she said finally. "The kids want to see you too. Is that all right?" My hand shook as I held the phone. "Of course, Lucy. I'd love that." After we hung up, I placed the phone down slowly. I couldn't stop the tears. Not from sadness, but from relief. That evening, I didn't write in my notebook. I just held it to my chest and whispered, "Thank you." The Sunday she came, the sun was shining. I sat on the garden bench wearing the pale blue cardigan Lucy had given me years ago. I brushed my hair twice and put on some rose perfume. The kind Thomas used to say reminded him of our first dance. When Lucy arrived, she had both her children with her, James and Ava. They had grown so much. James was tall and quiet like his father. Ava wore her hair in 2 braids and hugged me like she had always known how much I missed her. We sat in the garden and talked for hours. Lucy brought photos and showed me the children's school projects. James had drawn a tree for science class, and Ava had written a poem about the stars. "Ellie would love these," I said. "Who's Ellie?" Ava asked. I smiled. "A very special girl who saved me from silence." That evening, I watched them drive away. My heart ached a little, but it was a good kind of ache, like the feeling after a long walk, tired, but alive. Before bed, I opened my notebook and wrote, "They came back, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That makes all the difference." The next weeks moved gently, like soft ripples on water. Lucy and the children began visiting more often, and each time they came, something small changed inside me. My hands didn't shake as much. I found myself humming old songs in the morning. The silence in my room didn't feel as heavy anymore. One afternoon, I was sitting near the garden gate when Ellie ran up to me, breathless. "I have news," she said, eyes sparkling. "We're doing a school show about memories. And guess what?" "What?" I asked, smiling. "I'm going to tell your story. The one about the library and Thomas and the love note in the poetry book. I froze for a moment. My story? She nodded. I told my teacher, and she said it's perfect. Can I do it? Please? I reached for her hand. Of course, Ellie. I'd be honored. That evening, I sat with my notebook on my lap. The pen hovered over the page for a while. Then I wrote, "Someone wants to carry my memories forward. That means I will not be forgotten." On the day of the school show, the care home arranged a trip for a few of us residents. Janet, the nurse, helped me into the minibus. I wore my best coat and a scarf that Lucy had knitted for me the previous winter. When we arrived, the school gym was full of parents, children, and bright posters. The sound of chatter and laughter was almost too much at first, but then I saw Ellie waving at me from the stage. She was wearing a white blouse and holding a small notebook in her hand. My story. The room fell quiet as she stepped up to the microphone. "My name is Ellie," she said, her voice clear and brave. "And I want to tell you about a woman named Edna who once worked in a small library by the sea." As she spoke, my eyes filled with tears, not because I was sad, but because I had never felt so seen. Not in years. This little girl was giving my life back to the world, piece by piece. When the show ended, several people came up to me. "Was that really you?" "That was such a beautiful story. I hope my daughter grows up to be as thoughtful as Ellie." Janet leaned down and whispered, "You're famous now." I laughed for the first time in days. That night I wrote, I used to think my life was fading, but today it shined. The seasons began to change. Leaves fell like soft brown paper across the garden paths. The flowers bent low with cold. The days became shorter and the wind sharper, but I stayed warm, wrapped in my family's visits and Ellie's weekly drawings. She began making a book, the story of Edna, with pictures and short sentences. She said she would give it to me when it was finished. One day, Lucy arrived with a surprise. "We're renovating the guest room," she said. "Oh," I asked. "So that you can stay with us over the holidays. Would you like that?" The words didn't come right away. I was too shocked. "Yes," I finally said. "Yes, I would love that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the streetlight outside flicker in the breeze. I thought of Thomas, of our Christmases together, of Lucy as a child, hanging paper stars in the windows. "I'm going home," I whispered. The day I left for the holidays, the staff hugged me like I was going off to a new country. Ellie came running down the corridor with her book in her hands. "It's finished!" she shouted. "Look!" She handed it to me, a little handmade book with drawings and stories about my life. On the last page she had written, "To Miss Edna," who showed me that even old hearts carry young stories. I hugged her tightly. "You've given me more than you know, Ellie." She pulled back and smiled. "Will you come back?" "I might," I said. "But if I don't, You'll still have my story, won't you?" She nodded. At Lucy's house, the smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Her husband greeted me warmly, and the children had made a banner that read, "Welcome home, Grandma." It wasn't my old house, but it felt safe. It felt like belonging. We spent the holidays baking, decorating, and telling stories around the fireplace. One evening, Ava asked me to tell the story about the day her mum fell into the pond chasing a butterfly. Everyone laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks. Another night, James showed me a project he was working on. He was writing a small biography for school. "Can I write about you?" he asked. I hesitated. "Of course, if you'd like." He grinned. "You're the most interesting person I know." The same words Ellie had said. My heart swelled. That evening I wrote, "Maybe we don't disappear. Maybe we live on in the people who remember our stories." After the holidays, I chose not to return to the care home. Lucy offered for me to stay longer. "We'll make it work," she said. "It's not always easy, Mom, but we want you here." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I simply held her hand and said, "Thank you." I brought my notebook with me. It sat on my bedside table, always ready, always listening. I began writing less about the past and more about the present, about Ava's stories, James's drawings, Lucy's kindness, and quiet mornings with tea. Sometimes I still felt lonely, especially in the evenings when the house was quiet. But I also felt needed again, visible, alive. One morning, Ellie's mother called. "She's won an award," she said proudly, "for her storytelling project about you. She'd love to show you." Ellie came over that weekend. She wore a little medal and held a framed certificate. "It's ours," she said. "I only told the story. You lived it." We sat together in the garden, drinking lemonade. The spring flowers were beginning to bloom, and the sun warmed our faces. "I'm going to keep telling stories," she said. "About you. About everyone." I reached into my cardigan and pulled out a small box. "I want you to have this," I said. Inside was a necklace with a small silver heart. Thomas gave it to me on our 50th anniversary. "Really?" she whispered. I nodded. "It's yours now. Just promise to carry love with you. And stories." She placed it around her neck and leaned into me. "I promise." That night, I wrote my final notebook entry. Today, I passed something on. A story, a heart, a hope. Time passed. Months, then a year. I grew slower. My hands shook more. The walks became shorter. But my heart remained full. Every week, I sat in the garden while Ava read her stories aloud. James played music on his little keyboard. Lucy brought tea and wool, and we crocheted simple things: scarves, hats, a small blanket. And Ellie? She visited often. She started a storytelling club at school and brought drawings from other children who had spoken with older people. They have amazing stories too, she said, but most people don't ask. Keep asking, I told her. That's the magic. One afternoon, I stayed in bed. The world felt distant, like I was behind a window of fog. But I wasn't afraid. I had said what I needed to say. I had loved deeply. I had been remembered. Lucy sat beside me, holding my hand. "Mom," she said softly, "you changed. You opened back up. I see it now. You were never just getting old. You were waiting for us to see you again." I smiled weakly. "You found me, Lucy. Thank you." Ava and James came in quietly, each carrying a flower. Ellie followed, holding her book of our story. I looked at them all, my family, my friend, my legacy, and I whispered, "I'm not alone anymore." If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.